and thank you for joining us for our B Corp for the Wine Trade webinar. I'm Andrew Catchpole, editor of Harpers Wine and Spirit, and with me is a great panel drawn from across the trade, all of whom have a real depth of understanding of what it takes to become B Corp certified, and how this can underpin any business's sustainability journey, whether you're actually looking for certification or just using some of the 5 key impact areas of B Corp as a guide in your own sort of sustainability journey. Purpose of this session is to share some of that experience, great depth of experience across the panel, hopefully to help others along their way, as I say, on their sustainability pathways. There will be an opportunity for audience Q&A at the end, so we'd very much welcome questions. If you do have a question that you feel is really pertinent to what we're discussing at that point, then do pop it in the chat box, and we will look to get to it as time and flow of the discussion permits. So on that note, let's introduce the panel, and then we will crack on in. So we have Louisa Fitzpatrick, Director of Old Chapel Cellars, not sales. Forgive me, Louisa, hi. Rebecca Murphy, Sustainability Manager at North South Wines, and our partner in bringing this webinar to you. Marta Vidal, CEO of Valformosa. Hi Marta. And Tamara Roberts, who's CEO of Ridgeview Wine Estates. So a really nice hi Tamara. So a really nice cross-section of people, as I say, from the trade. Okay, right. So to kick off, there are myriad accreditations relating to sustainability. Why choose B Corp? Who would like to pick that up first?
I don't mind.
Yep. Let's go for it. Yep.
Okay, so I think when we, for a long time, looking at different accreditations, obviously a plethora of accreditations you can do for a business that cross from your sort of investors in people through to environment, sustainability, various other bits. And I think the one thing that piqued my interest with B Corp is the fact that it's holistic, and I think that's really, really important. I think it's very important to measure the business as a whole, not just as one area of the business. And I think being quite passionate about running the business in a particularly ethical and sustainable manner, the B Corp seemed to just tick a lot of boxes when I first heard about it, probably over a decade ago now. You know, people are people, good governance, the environment, of course, your community, your suppliers, your customers, everything is covered in terms of the B Corp. And I think that's what drew me to it more. Yeah, a one-stop shop for everything that I wanted to challenge the business to be, really.
So really sort of it's but the holistic nature of it, it's demanding across all areas, and yeah. Would that be the same? Would anyone else like to add anything to that?
I would say that was the kind of the key reason for us as well, was the holistic approach. One of the other things that drew us to B Corp, and it was one of the ways we really learned about B Corp to begin with, was the kind of community aspect of being a B Corp. And that's how we kind of learned about it in the beginning. Our MD Kim lives in the Oxfordshire area, and there's a really big B local community there. And she kind of got in contact with them when she was wanting to learn about the B Corp certification, and she could see this kind of thriving community of B Corps, and really kind of started to learn from them in that way. And it's more than just a kind of a certification. You become part of this community that you can learn from and develop and be inspired by. So that was one of the other reasons we could see this momentum of growth and this community growing that we kind of wanted to be a part of. So that kind of helped give us an extra reason, really, to look at B Corp over other accreditations.
And I presume that's across various different sectors of business. It's obviously not confined to the drinks trade, or So
no, you're being inspired by businesses from all different areas, and kind of learning from them. So yeah, it's really nice to kind of be in contact with people from different industries and learn from them.
Okay, excellent.
I absolutely agree with that. It's because for us all to be better and for us to have sustainability in terms of people and the environment, we've got to work with other businesses anyway. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. And like Rebecca said, the B Corp community, it's not trying to be exclusive or a group. It wants every company in there so that we can all do better together.
Yeah, no, great. And Marta, as a coming from the producing side.
No, I'm completely agree with all the aspects. The only thing maybe to add, to put something new on the table, is that it's also an international certification. That was also really important for us because more than 80% of our business is abroad. So that was also something important, at the beginning when B Corp came up in the table. So I will just add this aspect.
Yeah, no, very, very much. So it's we've discussed that from a local level, but still cross-fertilizing across different sectors, the Oxford level all the way to the international aspect of it. So which I think B Corp, just even if people aren't particularly aware of what lies behind it, has become very widely recognized, I think, as a standard bearer, hasn't it? I think it's fair to say. Is there any style of business that's best suited to B Corp, or is it sort of suitable and attainable for all, would you say? I mean, again, you're all in differing businesses, quite different businesses in a sense. If you took out the wine, the drinks thread, who's got any thoughts on that?
I think it's suitable for most businesses. There are some businesses which probably won't apply to anyone on this panel that can't be certified. Well, it's you have to be for profit, and then there's certain controversial industries that can't be certified. So fossil fuels, tobacco, gambling. So that won't apply to anyone on this call. But really, it is suitable and achievable for most businesses, and there's definitely the support out there for the more complex business structures from either B Lab or from other B Corps to kind of help understand the best routes to going about getting certified, and yeah, I don't see any businesses that couldn't. I think one of the key things is you need to have that impetus from the top to go for it, and that kind of support from the top of the business and senior management. I think that's the main thing. I think businesses that don't have that support from the key top level would find it very difficult to make the changes and put in place the things needed to and put the resources in place to be certified.
Yeah, Tamara, you were nodding there. You're CEO. So you're the top level. Do you have any sort of further comments on that? Is that very much the case? You've got to get the whole team on board and lead from the front, as it were, or the top.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard work. I'm not going to lie, and I think the way I approached it, because I knew just the impact it would have on business, on people's time, resource, and various other things, was to actually present to the board, then to my team, my reasons why I wanted to pursue it, and an understanding, and presented to them what B Corp was, what it meant, to get that engagement from the very, very beginning, and for them to see just how passionate I was about doing it and why it was so important to me, and that the board were also on board to pursue this. And I think, if you're this is not a tick box exercise. You can't. The job is never done. It's a ongoing, long-term, in terms of your decision making in the business. It changes how you make decisions in the business, and it changes how people make your delegation of those decision making in the business. It adds dimensions to it that just perhaps weren't there before. So it needs constant accountability and constant review and constant pushing to ensure that you're continuing the journey. So it's got to be brought in from, and it's not just from the top, but from the bottom. It's got to be brought in across every single part of the business in order to achieve it, I think.
Again, there's some nodding in agreement. We will drill down quite soon into some of that nitty gritty, what actually needs doing, and explore that. But there's some nodding. Rebecca, Marta, Louisa, similar sort of experience. Is there anything to add to that, or does that encapsulate the kind of dedication, for want of a better word, that's needed?
Shall I go? Yeah. Just touching on Tamara's bit about everyone being involved, we're a very small team, but everyone does need to understand it, but there's so much of it, and it is quite hard for colleagues and employees to really understand what it is, because there are so many facets, and yet really one person needs to lead it as well. So you don't really want to delegate it out to lots of people, but there are different ways to get your team involved. So each B Corp area, so like B Corp Oxford, London, we were Cornwall and Devon. There's now so many B Corps, there's Cornwall and Devon separately. They will do regular socials that will pick up on different parts of B Corp and what it means. And anyone can go to those, from B Corp or B Corp certified businesses or people just interested in it. So that's what I'd say. Everyone's got to be engaged, but there are different ways you can engage. And also B Corp has a very short but engaging video for employees to say, almost going, you don't know what this is about, here you go, this is what it is, this is how you can get involved. And then lastly, once you become certified, there is a platform called the B Hive. And that means if you work for a B Corp company, you can get discounts from other B Corp companies, you can share knowledge, you can ask questions about how to be better on really detailed stuff if you want. And it also raises awareness of the social events going on. So yeah, that's how I'd engage people, but it is essential too.
So that's really interesting. I mean, just thinking broadly, and again, a question out to the panel, we've sort of segued into what was going to be our next question, which is when you begin, where do you begin, and what should you have in place? What should you be aware of if you're about to undertake what is obviously a fairly mammoth journey in many ways? Are there other aspects you should sort of consider? How do you actually begin the journey then? What are the first steps? I mean, what do you need to have in place?
Well, the first step really is to work out, as Louisa says, you need someone driving the project forward. So you need to work out who your project manager is. The B Corp, B Lab UK have got some really good training resources on their website now as well. They didn't have them when we first started, so we actually we got a bit of training from a B leader. So there are B leaders out there that you can pay for a bit of consultancy that will come and kind of speak to you and help you if you need that. But there are 2 really good training courses now on the B Lab UK website. And then the first thing you really need to do is sit down with the relevant people. So for us, it was me, Kim, our MD, and our finance director. And we went through the impact assessment on the website, and it's completely free. You just put together your profile and you go in and you can just go through the impact assessment question by question and answer where you are at the moment. And there'll be quite a few questions where you'll have to go away and work things out you might not have worked out before. And that's the first place you need to start really, and see where you sit point wise when you first do it. When we first did it, you have to get over 80 points. When we first did it, we were in the mid 50s, but that was because there was a lot of questions where we couldn't answer them yet, or there were things we were doing but we wouldn't have had the evidence for it. And so that then helps you develop your action plan, and that's when you need to start bringing in other people from other teams and start working through those actions to get you over the 80 points. But really, you just need to start by going on the website and exploring and doing the impact assessment for how you are at that point as a business. That's the kind of the first steps you need to take.
And then what happens if you can't achieve that 80 threshold even once you've been away? And
well, if you can't get over the 80, you need to be over the 80 to certify. You really need to be at about 84, 85, because you're going to lose a few points through the certification. But if for any reason you can't get to the 80, it's still a really positive thing to do, because you'll go through those questions and you'll be like inspired by different points within the question. So you might do it and be like, right, we're answering just this at the moment, but we could do all these things, and it will help you to become a better business just by going through that and reading the questions, even if you can't possibly get yourself to the 80. But I would say most businesses would be able to. It might take time. So it has 18 months to get up to the 80 points. So it's not something you can just do overnight. And there was quite a few big things we needed to put in place, or policies we needed to write, or procedures. But most businesses should be able to get over the 80 if they've got the kind of the drive and the resources there to do it.
It's a fairly similar story for others. This would be a really recognizable path the way in. Marta, what was your experience?
Yeah, we have a similar experience. One thing that I did at the beginning, it was to sit down with some CEOs who already had this certification. I think that it's important to understand other businesses. We were the first winery in Spain to achieve this certification. So we went to other industries to know what was B-Corp, because we didn't know that at the beginning. And yeah, we start with the initial assessment. And as soon as we saw that the results were pretty good, we decided to go for that, to go for the evaluation, and to do like a quick wins list during 3 months. Because there are a lot of things that you already have in the company, but maybe you don't have the policy, but you are already done this. So this was the way we started with this, and it was pretty fast because the initial result was good. But yeah, but it's a continuous improvement. So we keep doing a lot of things in terms of B-Corp. Yeah.
I think that continuous improvement side of it is perhaps important just to touch on. And you're aware of the Harpers Sustainability Charter, and 1 or 2 people who have now signed up have been concerned. They've had a private conversation before saying, well, X rival is further down these various sustainability pathways. Are we not going to look, as if we're languishing behind? And say, no, the point is, though, it's all about the journey. It's about the ongoing improvements. It's about, and it may be that you tackle the low-hanging fruit first and then more difficult stuff later, but it's about that journey and about transparency of that journey, I think, isn't it? And it's so we've got into touching on what it actually involves, and I think very early on, Louisa, Tamara, a couple of you actually, I could sense from what you're saying that don't be under any illusion that this is going to be a very easy breeze. It does involve a lot of work and a lot of planning, a lot of thought, changes perhaps in the way that the company is its ethos, the way it's working. So what else does it involve on the resource side? If we looked at time frame, paperwork, costs, we've mentioned it needs a dedicated kind of point person, someone who is the B-Corp sort of manager or driver. What of all those things, what can you say to our listeners in terms of the actual resources, knowing what you know now that you actually have to put aside realistically if you're looking for B-Corp accreditation? Who wants to pick up on that? Tamara?
I'll pick up a little bit on it, I suppose, from a producer perspective as well. When you're, we have obviously viticulture, winemaking, we have hospitality, as well as those things. So that there's an awful lot of different things happening. And for me, it's the measurement side of it and putting in place, particularly around the winemaking and the processes around that, is ensuring that you can measure, particularly for the environmental side and your carbon and your net zero journeys, that you've got the ability to measure everything. And I think a lot of the time when you go start the journey, you probably don't have the measurements that you need in order to create targets to do that. And it does take a year or so to get to the point where you've actually got some meaningful measurements of different equipment doing different processes at different times of the year. And to have that ability to then and your waste levels and what you're doing with your waste particularly, I think is super important, and a real eye-opener, particularly for us in terms of what we were doing and how we could reduce water usage, waste leaving the winery, and what's happening with it. And we've had some really interesting conversations around that, which I think's building new relationships in different industries, in fact, and looking at how other industries are dealing with their waste and those sorts of things. So I think, that it adds another dimension to what you're doing, because you're reanalyzing everything you're doing with a different lens. So you're going through everything again. And so I think that for us was a particular eye-opener. And I think on the other side of it as well, one thing which just to be mindful of is that you are expected to do an impact report every year. So you're expected to publish a report about what you've done over the last 12 months every year. And that takes resource, time, effort to bring all of that together across the business with your marketing team involved and various other things to become, to create something that's meaningful, accountable. You have to be honest about where you are and where you've got to. But don't underestimate that as well, I think is another part I would say.
Marta, does that all sound very familiar? Have you followed a very similar path in terms of the resources that you have to put into it?
Was
Yeah,
that to me? Sorry. Or Tamara?
Sorry.
Was that to me?
Who was I asking? I was asking Marta. I think there might have been some noise.
Marta, thank you. Sorry.
But Louisa, please, by all means, pop up next. Yeah.
No, just to add a little bit information, I completely agree. We work with more for us, the most important thing, we spend a lot of time talking with all the people. Of course, no, you spend resources in time, in money, but the hard thing maybe was to talk to all our grape growers, to make them understand what's B-Corp. We have more than 400 grape growers, so a part of the regular suppliers. So it was important for us to let them understand what was B-Corp, what is B-Corp, because if not, for us, it doesn't make sense to be a B-Corp company. We are also a B-Corp company for them. So something that maybe we didn't know before is that it will require time talking with people and make them understand in which process we were involved. So this was nice. From one side, it was a huge amount of time, but in the other hand, it was important because we spent time with them and it was nice, the process. So I think that you have to enjoy the process. If not, if you have to do something on purpose, that's not the way we wanted to do that. So.
Okay, brilliant. Louisa, you're coming from a very different perspective, and I'll bring Rebecca in a moment as well. But any different? I mean, obviously you're a very different style of business.
Picking up on what Tamara said about the measuring, and you're on the production side. My hint, that wasn't my hint, it was given to me by Finisterre, was record everything. So when Rebecca said the first step is to go on the B impact assessment and start getting those questions and the points internally in your business, have a record that you keep up to date all the time. And for example, on ours is there's all the factors of our workforce, what training they have, what pro bono time we do, what donations. We record all our goods in, mileage, all our deliveries out, our water usage, our refuse, our recycling, all sorts of things. And that means that when you come to recertify, because along with the first certification process and then the annual impact report that you need to write and be honest about, again, like Tamara said, you have to recertify every 3 years. We certified in February 22, so I was like, okay, I'm good for a bit. But you have to submit your recertification by 6 months before your due date. And it's a huge amount of work that you have to do again. And by having that continual dashboard reporting measures, however you want to word it internally, is really helpful for B-Corp. But actually, the whole thing of this is for us to be better businesses. And if you're continually looking at what volunteer days have we done this month, that's really useful to see how you are impacting and working with the community, for example.
Yeah, and obviously, thank you. We're looking to inspire people who are listening in. I should have said at the beginning, we're being recorded and we'll post this on our YouTube channel. So if you have colleagues that may want to catch up, they obviously can do. Rebecca, I'm sure we've spoken before about, as I say, we want to be inspiring rather than putting people off, but what I can only think of is it sounds like reams of paperwork. How do you approach that with a big smile and a positive attitude? Is there anything you want to add to what Louisa said, I suppose?
Yeah, there is a lot of work involved in it, and as we've talked about before, it touches on lots of different areas of the business, and you need to make sure that everybody is kind of energized and can see the purpose for the extra work that kind of goes on to them. With us, obviously, when you talk about resources specifically, you know, my role was created through this process. It started off, I was part-time doing about 50% of my time on B Corp at the start of 2021, and now in 2024 I'm full-time, and I'm doing all of my time goes onto our sustainability projects. But I would say the investments we're making when it comes to working with the consultancy working with for our carbon footprint calculations, or the project we're working on getting ISO 14001 certified for our environmental management system, all the costs involved in all those projects are future-proofing our business. We're trying to make our business the best it is, and it means that when requirements come further down the line, either from our customers or from government, we will be where we need to be. We will be ahead of what's required of us. So although there is investments in time, in money, in people, hopefully it means our business is in the best shape it can be for the future. And that's, you know, we want our business to be a sustainable business that has a positive impact in the future. So yeah, there is investments, but they're important, and hopefully will have real kind of benefit for us as we move forward.
And by talking about you know, things coming down the line in the future, are you thinking about a mix of legislative and also, I suppose we could just call it kind of pressure from supply chain partners who are all looking increasingly for sustainable partners to do business?
It's definitely helped us get a foot in the door with certain customers, or just a reassured customers we're already working with. And then there's certain things we worked on to like analyze all of our product packaging data, all of our product packaging and data we've collected for that then's been really useful with kind of EPR reporting and other reporting that comes up as well. So there's certain things we are doing that means that we're kind of a bit ahead of what people are asking. But it gives people confidence who work with us, that they know we are doing the right things and working to be better at all the areas of sustainability.
Okay, and the one you mentioned the word cost, and I think that's the first time it's been mentioned. That was one thing I was going to see if anyone would stick their neck out about. But would anyone care to? I can understand reasons if you don't wish to, but actually put a cost, a value cost on it.
It's so obviously in our side there's my salary, and then there's the different projects that we're spending money on, which we might have done with or without B Corp. But you can go onto the B Corp website, and the actual cost of being a B Corp is done by your turnover, and it's all clear on there. You can put in what your turnover is, the type of business you are, and it will tell you what that annual cost is. And there is an annual cost, and it is considerable. But it's definitely the benefits from being a B Corp and being part of that community. Although you can't put a figure on it, it's a really hard thing to put a figure on. Being a B Corp has gained us X amount of business or X amount. You can't do that. But the cost is definitely worth it for what we want to be as a business and the benefits that we've got from that.
I assume you would all concur with that. I mean, having.
I'll just add one thing, I think, as well, is that it's been really, really helpful for us for recruitment and retention of staff. I think it is something that when we do have people coming for interviews or, you know, applying for jobs, it is mentioned pretty much every time as a reason for their interest as well in looking at Ridgeview potentially. So I think there's an element of that. Obviously, it's part of a bigger picture, because it's, you know, it sets you out as a particular type of employer, and I think that's really, really important for people when they're looking for something maybe beyond just the wage packet, which is obviously always important and always priority, but these other bits help as well. And I think as well, it does create, I would say, within the business, it creates a bit more of a community in the business. There's a, you know, I think people feel they've got more of a say since we've had B Corp in there. It's created a really nice employee voice within the business because of the B Corp requirements, and that I think just had a massively positive effect on what we're doing. And although it's, you know, you get constant challenges, I think it's really important you know, to have that in the business. So yeah, that was the only bit I was was going to bring into that, as well as obviously the customer. I mean, from our perspective, we are mainly a supplier to bigger customers, and you know, we now have to fill in pretty much every time, every year, a sort of a compliance schedule around our sustainability. So that, you know, and I think at the moment it's a choice for us to do B Corp. I honestly think, and let's go 10 years down the line, I don't think many companies are going to have a choice other than being on a sustainable journey and having some sort of accreditation or some sort of measurement way in which to show what they're doing, because we're never going to get to sort of the UK's target of carbon, you know, net zero by 2050 without some regulation coming in, because you know, there's the carrot only goes so far. There does need to be a stick to get everybody on the journey at some point. I feel, this is a personal opinion, but I mean, I can see it happening.
Again, as Rebecca was saying, it's looking at, you know, what's coming down the line and sort of to a degree future-proofing, because that's the way that everything is inevitably and necessarily going. So, but really, really interesting point about, especially in a time of staffing shortages for many people and businesses, that actually is an additional attractive reason to want to work for a particular organization. I mean, that's really interesting, and I can see that resonating ever more. Yeah, it's sort of really, I mean, something you sort of hold your head high and say, feel a little bit good about yourself for actually having done this. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything on that, but we've just eye on the clock actually ticking past. Think about how it actually works. So some more of the nitty gritty for those of us, I'd probably throw myself in here, who don't know as much as perhaps they should. Talk a little bit about the, if the panel could elaborate on the 5 key impact areas, assessment areas of B Corp. So governance, workers, community, the environment, and customers. So we've obviously touched on aspects of these. But how do they help an organization navigate their way to greater sustainability? They're presumably the individual, the main pillars by which you have to be assessed and assess your practice. It's probably quite a big, broad question with a lot to say on it, but who'd like to dive in? Who's smiling? Marta, do you want to try tackling this?
Yeah, I can try to answer. It's pretty tough, but yeah, I think that in all the aspects you can improve as a company. So that's easy. In terms, for example, of governance, it really helps us to align the long-term goals. I think that B Corp helps, no, especially if you are a company that you are thinking in a long term, with this more sustainable vision of the company, and review if we had the right people in the right places. So this was a good moment to stop and think a little bit, no, in this future and in this long-term perspective. In terms of workers, it also inspires us, as Rebecca said, no? Because there are a lot of things that you can do for your workers, especially in developing new policies and seeing other companies, what they are doing. So we keep embodying the well-being we really want to have for all our people. So we keep improving this every year and doing new things. And as a community, we have, as I said before, a community of more than 400 Greek growers. So we honestly think that we have an impact model. So we are every day, you know, thinking how can we create or increase our positive relation with them and create value. So these were the main things we were thinking about. Environmentally speaking, I think that we already did a lot of things in terms of environment before the B Corp. So maybe in this aspect, we put all the information on the table, we organized that, we had the chance to document it. So that was really useful because we had a lot of information in all the areas, but we haven't had the opportunity to put all of them together and organize them. So, and in the end, of course, in terms of consumers, which is really important for us, it gave us the opportunity to think how can we create value with them, how can we improve our proposal. So yeah, these are the main things, the main aspects in each area we were working on.
Rebecca, is there anything that you can add to that?
I think it's really interesting hearing Marta talk, because in each of the 5 areas, as you go through it, you realise some you're stronger in than others, and ours are very different to Valformosa's. For us, our strongest areas when we did it initially, the assessment, was in workers and customers, because that's been something that we've kind of really focused on. North South Wines is only 10 years old, and the way we were kind of founded by Kim, our MD, was about having a really great place to work, and a lot of the foundations of that was within the workers section, and then it was also about our relationships with our customers, because of the way our business is set up. So those 2 areas, when we answered, we were already very high in, and all we needed to do with those was add a bit of feedback model, which wasn't something that we kind of had in place. So we now have a worker satisfaction survey each year and a customer satisfaction survey each year, with feedback that we act on and make sure we kind of track and act on. So there wasn't loads we needed to do there, but for us, the environmental side was quite a big area, and we'd always relied on our suppliers, because we're really quite a small business with a little office. There's only 27 of us. We'd really always focused on our suppliers and their environmental aspect, and not impact, and not on what we were doing internally. So it was a really kind of good time to look internally at all of our actions and really take ownership of what we were doing as a business. So there was quite a lot within the environment, and there's quite a lot we are still doing within the environment section to make improvements. And then within the community side, we found it really difficult, the community side, and it's changed now, but we started it in 2020, and the community aspect's about looking at where your business is based and the local community around your business. And we didn't really feel like we had a community, because we all work from home, and we just had this little office, and we weren't really there very much. And this is kind of changed now, as we're all coming back to work, and we've moved our office to Bicester as part of like the Oxfordshire community. So that has really, we spent a lot of time kind of investing into our kind of community impact and what we're doing with our kind of charity work and our community work. So it is really kind of different areas you end up prioritizing depending on where you're kind of strong, and that's where the impact assessment's so good, because you're looking at so many different areas, and you can see your kind of weakness areas and where you need to invest your time and resources to improve.
So in a sense, you're saying that it gave you clarity, this framework, because you're busy doing really good stuff here, but over here in this area or these areas, it sort of opens your eyes to where you're at there as well. So yeah, Louisa, I suppose this is quite an interesting part of the discussion. What's sort of the old Chapel Cellars experience? Again, were there areas where you were already a fair way down the pathways that you needed to be, and others that you were much weaker in? I mean, how did the...
Yeah, I'd say it's someone mentioned it earlier, but you will find that you're doing things, you just you can't prove it, so then you find a way to prove it. For example, the different policies on whatever it is, maternity leave or travel policy or something like that. So it just makes you formalize everything. Something I wanted to mention, because you wanted this to be inspiring, is that I'm not sure this is going to be inspiring now, is not to get too bogged down on questions that you are never going to be able to get the point on. So there are lots of questions, I think about 200, to get those points. And I fairly recently had 2 different wine companies, opposite ends of the country, say to me, well, I've looked at B Corp, but I can't do it because we're under male ownership. So you're never going to get points for being female owned. And that doesn't matter. It's not about changing it to do that. Just move on, because B Corp is a very rigorous accreditation that gets under the skin of your business, of every little aspect. And it doesn't mean you need to change the ownership or not answer it because you get 0 on that question, because there are other questions that you will thrive on. And that kind of goes back to one of your earlier points about what type of business is B Corp for. And it really is for all businesses of all industries, almost, because there are some that can't be certified at the moment. I don't know if you want me to expand on that now, touching on Rebecca's point. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I've got a little bit of noise, as I said, in the background. I should hopefully... be talking here now. Yes, I was just saying that we spoke about that a few days ago, and I think we'll come to that in just a second, because that's a really interesting point. So just wanted one more go at this. And I think Rebecca also mentioned this. So you don't have to embrace all in the same depth at the same time, and there is fluidity, and that then, I presume, as circumstances change, you can go deeper into each of the 5 sort of identified key impact assessment areas, and improve as you go along. But you don't have to do everything at once. I think that's a really important point. And it could it be that you can fall away a little somewhere when you come around for your next certification, but you've improved in other areas? Is that fluidity does exist, does it? Or once you've got the standard, is that it? You can only go up from there, or at least stay the same?
From experience and speaking to other B Corps, you always want to try and improve your points, and it might be, that's quite possibly each business's goal with the recertification. But yeah, on each section, the governance, workers, community, and so on, there are then impact business models where you can get extra questions, extra points if it's a really strong point for you. So yeah.
Okay. Would anyone else like to add anything to that particularly? So I wanted to ask Louisa about
yeah, I think
sectors. Yeah, Tamara.
I was just going to say as well is that when you do start looking at the questions, and you can spend there are sometimes there are things that you think, oh, I could just about do that, but it's like 0.04 of a point, and you've just got to be really mindful of focusing on where you're going to get the most value for the effort that you're putting in, because some of it, it is, most of it would be doable, but with a bit of effort and resource. And it is really focusing in on those areas where actually you're going to get a little bit more bang for your buck, as it were, in terms of because that's where B Corp are obviously putting their sort of priorities, as it were. And and I think you're not going to be adding huge amounts of points every year. Once you've certified, it gets harder, because you've done the bits that are relatively straightforward for you to achieve through measurements and policies, various other bits and pieces. And then it becomes, every time you look at it again, it's like, well, yeah, you get to the point where it becomes more challenging, I think. And so just really focus in on the areas where there's some decent return to be had on that investment, in terms of, if you're looking to increase your points, I think and that's an area that just to be mindful of, because you can spend a lot of time doing something and it would only improve your score by 0.04 of a point or something, and that's really really important to be mindful of, I think.
Yeah, and I think I use the term lower hanging fruit, not that they're still not high up, as you're saying, possibly.
Yeah.
Sort of, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Louisa, you mentioned a little earlier that there might be reasons why a company can't be B Corp accredited or certified, and I think there's a sort of anomaly at the moment with which you've experienced as a business. Do you want to?
Yeah,
can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I think the takeaway from this session would be for anyone involved to go away and look at the B impact assessment and have a go at answering the questions and see where you get to, because it's not always about getting the certification. Yes, that's nice, but actually it's about using their framework and standards to analyze your business and be a better business. And there's a really good holiday resort down here called Gwell and Moore, and they have been through the full B Corp process of the questionnaire and the assessment, but they don't intend to submit. They are using it to look and improve. B Corp is really, really popular at the moment. There's a very, very long waiting list once you submit to get analysed. And one of the reasons is that B Corp's been really successful, and there are all these industries that they are having to get up to speed with. And as a result, recently, there have been a number of industries where they haven't developed the risk standards for them. And as a result, they have said, right, actually, because we haven't got the resource or time to look at these industries, we're just going to have to say no at the moment. So some examples might be construction, fish, anything related to fishing industry, jewelry industry. There's a diamond producer in Cornwall. It's environmentally sustainable. It's a lot more expensive than regular diamonds, but it's completely sustainable. There's no way they could even start the process. And another one on that, I'll touch on wine, which is very important. When you eventually submit, in the disclosure, it will say, are you involved in alcohol? And obviously we all need to tick yes. That for us added another 2 months to the certification process, because they want to look into, are you selling it responsibly? Who are you selling it to? How do you sell it? And because it's a toxic substance in B Corp's standards. And one we came across recently was cigars. There's a 0 tolerance of tobacco. And so if you are a hotel merchant or anything like that selling cigars, despite them being like an artisanal product and so on, that's a no. So it's just worth having a look on the again on the B Corp site, which is standards, controversial issues, and just make sure that you're not any of those. Like I don't know the exact detail of this, but I believe that plastic bottles are a no-no at the moment. But for any of us that have worked with PET for wine, I'm worried. I don't know who's on this call will know so much more about this than I, but PET can sometimes be more environmentally friendly than glass, but at the moment it would be a 0 tolerance. Therefore, you cannot certify if that's your product. So I just think it's really important for everyone to be aware of that before you start this quite intense process. But use the framework anyway to help be a better business.
So I think that exactly, it's a really important point, isn't it? That the framework is there and it's open and accessible to all. So
it's free. It's free as well.
It's free, yeah. Which is so you could be, you could be a business without much resources, or very small business. So that's interesting. And you also mentioned the standards. Rebecca, you were also saying something earlier when we spoke about evolving B Corp standards. So again, this is Louise, you just talked about areas where things are just growing so fast they simply can't and haven't been able to cover, whether it's the diamond industry or fishing or whatever it may be. Tobacco is out, that's perhaps understandable. Let's not go down a tobacco rabbit hole at the moment though, but evolving B Corp standards, Rebecca. So it's a moving feast as well. It's evolving as those who have adhered to B Corp standards are evolving themselves. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there's a big consultation that's happened, and they're going through a process, and this is a global change to the standards. By the end of next year, the impact assessment and the questionnaire will be different to what it is now, but we don't know exactly how that's going to look yet, but it will be changing. And at the moment, the conversation is around having 10 areas where you have to meet a kind of minimum level within those 10 areas. And I think it's really to try and get that kind of consistency, rather than, businesses just being really strong in one area but not considering another, but having that kind of consistent approach across all the areas of sustainability. So the current certification standards will be running until some point towards the end of 2025, and then they'll be moving to a new standard. And as I said, we don't know exactly how that will look at the moment, but it's just worth keeping in mind, as long as you've submitted, you don't have to have gone through the audit process, but as long as you've pressed the button and submitted before the standards change, you'll be doing it on the current standards. So I would say if you're looking to become B Corp certified and can do it before the end of next year, I would go ahead and get it done before the standards change.
So it may become tougher yet.
It may become tougher, yeah. Looking at the consultation, there are a few areas where I'm like, right, we need to do a bit of work in that area. So I think it will be a bit tougher when it changes. But yeah.
Yeah, no, sure. Okay. Audience, got a great audience out there. I did have a peek, and know obviously a fair few of you. but you're quite quiet, which at the moment. So if you do have any questions, we're sort of running on time. Do pop them into the Q&A or even the chat, and we'll endeavour to answer. But I suppose from the panel's point of view, are there any other sort of salient points that you'd like to make? Area, ground. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and hopefully we've given a really good insight. And I think it's been very positive. There've been a lot of positives, the reasons to doing it, but also very honest and realistic about the fact that this is, you do need to put resources, and this is very serious. You've got to think about it. It's got to be ingrained in your companies. We have got a couple of questions have now popped in. Really ingrained in your company's sort of ethos. Okay, so Kieran, thank you. Kieran Gibson has asked, can you please elaborate on the areas of the new framework from the consultation that seem challenging? Do you and this open to the whole panel, but do you have an inkling of that?
Yeah, so the 10 areas, the ones that I think there's going to be a lot more of a focus around collective action, so working within the industry, and then even further up into the kind of the government, or like impacting and having more of a collective action aspect. So that is something which it's going to be hard to kind of understand exactly what they're going to require from you. So that's one of the areas where I'll be looking at a lot more detail when the actual kind of final new standards come out. And about there's a real focus on JEDI, which is justice, equality, diversity and inclusion, and it's something we're really working with internally at the moment. And one of the areas we were didn't score very highly, and we're really gender diverse kind of business. We've got over 50% females in management roles and that kind of thing, but we didn't have a strategy or a kind of process in place for increasing diversity within the business. And there's going to be a whole section focusing on JEDI. So that's something we are really kind of working on and focusing on what our strategy will be around that. So yeah, when I saw that in the consultation, I was very much like, we are working on it. We need to kind of step up our kind of work in that area.
Okay, thanks, Kieran. Hopefully that answers some of your question. Another question from Lara Sills. Thank you, Lara. And she's asking, how long from starting did it take you to make the submission? i.e., 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? Would anyone else like to pick up on that? Marta, you're thinking about it, contemplating.
Yeah. In our case, we started the initial assessment in June 2023. We had the result in July, more or less. And before August, we applied for the certification. So we got the certification in March. That's more or less, it's 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that's quite quick. I think a lot of businesses, it takes a bit longer. For us, from first doing the assessment to pressing the button, it was 18 months. And then there was a 7-month wait to actually go through the audit process, and then the audit took a while. So we submitted in July 22 and actually got certified in April 23, because it was it's probably different in different countries as well. There's a real backlog in the UK because it's become so popular. So for us, the process was a lot longer. But yeah, it can vary business to business.
When I asked that, at least in Spain, they told me that the average time is 1.5 years. That's more or less what you are saying. So
yeah, tomorrow and next
Can I
year.
give a quick answer to that as well, Andrew? So now it's another positive thing. When you actually we did, I think the question was about when you start to when you can submit, perhaps, and you can do that in about 3 months, because the advice I was given from a few B leaders who are involved with it is, once you get over that 80 points, press submit, because you've got to have 80 points to submit. But because of that 7 or 8 month or however long that wait time to get verified, you can keep increasing your score. So actually you can submit fairly quickly, but then just keep working on it, and then they will give you warning of when you're about to be verified, and that's when you really need your points in, because they'll stop. You won't be able to do more. Have I got that right, Rebecca?
I think so. We didn't do it that way. We submitted with everything kind of ready and all our evidence ready, and it was a bit unknown how long the wait was going to be once we pressed the button and things. So yeah, we didn't do it that way, but that's very good advice to speed it along.
Brilliant, thank you. And Kieran's come back with another question directed to you, Marta, actually. But Kieran, if you don't mind, I might broaden this out a little. The actual question is, were there any challenges explaining to the large number of grape growers you work with? What did you find was the best approach to getting them on board? And I'd like to follow that up with a second question, which I think, Tamara, you first brought up about embedding the embedding it in the organization and all the people within a business. But firstly, so your grape growers, how did you explain a little bit more about how you persuaded them and brought them on board?
First of all, let me explain that grape growers, or our grape growers, is part of our family. It's part of our workforce. So I think that it was a challenge because they don't really need B-Corp, or they don't really know what it implies. So the best way to involve them and to get them on board was to go to explain them how important it was for us, no, for Vallformosa. So if you think Vallformosa, or if you think in our relationship, we're a team. So if it was important for us, it's important for them. So we try to explain them. We have like a big meeting once per year. So we try to explain them what we are doing, how do we do business, so we try to work as a team, no? We need their grapes, we need the vineyards. So I think that we co-create, no, that the need to do it together.
Okay, fantastic. And there's possibly nothing to add to that, actually, sort of trying to broaden the question out. Has anyone actually found it's been difficult to explain why you'd be taking these steps as a business? Has anyone found that some people within an organization have just needed a little more coaching or explanation or encouragement? Or you just not really sort of found that? Do people buy in fairly readily? What's just a quick sort of, yeah, Tamara.
I think it's fair to say you'll have in the business people who are your ambassadors, who are 100%, 150% in some cases, interested in sustainability generally. That's what, it's something that's it's a personal thing to an extent as well. But those are the people that you need to engage really closely, and they become sort of, you can have whatever you call them, be leaders or whatever within your business and areas. But and no, of course you don't. Not everybody's going to get on board. No, and to the point where the frustrations of, please put things in the right recycling bin. There's only so many things you can put out to for people to utilize, and that with signs above it and various other things. But human nature is not to do that, is to insert stuff, because it's not a priority. And so making it a priority and that sort of constant carrot, I think, more than stick, to try and engage with the workforce is that's just something that's ongoing. But that would be regardless in anything you do. Not everybody's 100% behind you on everything, and I think that's fair. But work with the people who are, reward the people who are, praise the people who are doing what you do, and hopefully along the way you'll get more buy-in as well.
I'm only smiling because I one stage I confiscated everyone's litter bins by their desks at Agile Media to ensure that everyone was walking to the recycling bins. It's also good. It's better for their health to get up for every so. But anyway, we've got one more question, and time is I keep saying this, time is running. It's just such a big topic. I think there's so much we could keep discussing. Holly Ellis Lake, thanks for the question, Holly. And you're asking, we have been doing the assessment, and we are close to the 80 points, but we thought we'd try to get over to allow for being potentially pushed back. Do you think this is worth doing, or shall we submit as soon as we reach 80? Tamara, you're nodding. Is that a... Yeah,
I mean, from my experience, it took so long to get from submission to, and during that time we added points all the time. We were constantly working on it. And I think hindsight would be, I would have submitted what Louisa was saying, was to submit it when I got to 80 and just built from there, because we have plenty of time, and I think that's, by the sounds of it, there still is plenty of time to get where you need to get to. So I would definitely recommend that.
I would say have a plan to get by the point of being audited to get to about 83, 84, because you do lose a couple during the audit. You need a couple in the bank. So as long as you've got a plan to make those changes to get to a bit before the audit happens, then kind of press the button and just get on with getting those few extra points in place before the audit happens.
I'm also, is it true as well? I mean, Louisa, Rebecca, you probably know this a bit more than me, but is that even if you just were say you got 82 points, you were pushed back to 79 or something in the audit, you are given some grace to then go back, aren't you? It's not like done, you're out. It's a case of you then have, I don't know, how many months or whatever to move yourself back up. Yeah.
I think they give you like 3 months or something like that to make the changes you need to get back over 80. So there is a bit of space there to make more changes.
That's good to hear. I didn't realize there was some flexibility, which makes sense in the system. So fantastic. Well, thank you for your questions, audience. Panel, you've, I think, been really great, given a lot of depth of insight. Are there any sort of final rounding up points that anyone would like to make? Anything you feel we just touch on?
I think if you're going through the process, the key thing is evidence on everything you answer. Make sure you've got a policy, a presenter, a data, whatever it is. Just make sure you've got the evidence that you can show, and then you'll be fine as you go through the audit process. I think that's my key bit of advice.
Yeah, and one for me as well, don't be afraid to talk to as many people and steal their ideas, because that's what it's all about. It's all about us working together to do the best we can, and we can't all think of, in our isolated businesses, the right things. So talk to as many people, find out what they're doing. If you're stuck on something, reach out, because someone in the B-Corp community will have had the same issue and overcome it in some way or different ways. And I think that's really, really important. It's everyone steals each other's ideas. It's brilliant.
Stealing ideas in a good way. Marta, a final word?
Worthy, so I think I highly recommend to go for the certification.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And Louisa, is this sort of law of diminishing returns that everyone said? What needs to be said?
Just log on and onto the impact assessment and answer the questions, because that bit's quite fun. And then think, can I do this? And let's go for it. So there's no cost until you until much further down the line. And then I would like to echo that it's very open, and any B Corp companies are willing to share information on how to answer questions. So reach out.
Excellent. So it's like buying a great bottle of wine or a fantastic bottle of spirits. Just don't worry too much about the cost. Put it to the back of your mind and go for it. And what's also coming down the line will be benefits and also necessity, which we touched on, didn't we? So well, on that note, thank you very much. Thank you, Louisa, Rebecca, Marta, Tamara. Thanks to the audience for joining us, and hopefully we've this fantastic panel's given you food for thought and some really good advice as well, actually. And it's great to have questions from those who are entertaining the idea, or actually just looking at hovering around their 80-point threshold. And so we're expecting at Harpers to hear from someone soonish, as a new B Corp business in the drinks world. So that's great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.